Now.
Yeah. Hello and welcome to Money Talks. I'm your host Shllok Rawat. Our guest today is the co-founder and CEO of CredAble, a fintech firm which specializes in supply chain financing. A company which in only about 5 years has already is already a finalist in the fintech startup of the year hosted by the IFTA. We have the man who is ahead of his time and revolutionizing the Indian market and giving giving small businesses financial capital to fulfill their dreams. Mr. Nirav Choksi, thank you for coming on our podcast.
Thank you, Shllok.
Today, we're going to talk about many interesting topics, including the story behind the astronomical success of CredAble, Mr. Choksi's philosophy on business, and his takes on the future of the field. So, Nirav Uncle, if you could start off, to someone who doesn't know anything about your company and job, could you please sum it up in some words what CredAble does?
Sure. So, Shllok, what essentially CredAble does is provides working capital to ecosystems of large corporates. And when I mean ecosystems of large corporates, if you think of a large company, let's say like, I don't know, Walmart or Reliance, on one side, they have a lot of vendors, right, who supply goods to them. And then on the other side, they have customers like dealers, distributors, retailers, who they supply goods to. Now, both these ecosystems generally comprise of a large percentage of small businesses who don't have access to working capital that they require to grow and manage their businesses. And that's where a company like CredAble comes in, provides the technology, provides the relationships with banks, and provides capital to help them scale.
Okay, so as of I know, your company is fintech, and a lot of people think about fintech and they think that you have to have a computer science background to study this. And I know that you have a computer science background. Do you think your education at the University of Michigan and your background with previous jobs like Choksi Tech have helped you grow this fintech business?
Well, I haven't, the last time I wrote a piece of code was in university 25 years ago, right? Shllok, so if you ask me to write a line of Java code, I can't do it today. But that being said, understanding technology helps you in being able to get the right kind of people who are experts in that field and help and empower them to build your technology and build businesses for you. So as an entrepreneur, it's important. Your greatest skill is in identifying, nurturing, retaining, and motivating people who are far better and far smarter and far more intelligent than you are.
Okay.
Rather than doing it yourself, right?
Yeah.
And you know me, I'm extremely lazy, right? So
Yes.
I end up trying to find the best people and give them all they need to build good things around us.
So do you think when you studied, you understood the background of the certain type of people that you should hire in your future in the firm, or do you think, or do you think computer science is a complete waste for your point of view?
I don't think any education is waste. Look, what education does and a formal education does is gives you the ability to think logically and think in a structured way. It enhances your problem solving skills. It disciplines you. So there are a lot of soft skills you acquire besides the technical knowledge of what you learn, right? But
Yeah.
there are some things that come with experience. Now, I've spent 20 years odd building different kind of businesses. So in my journey of doing that, a lot of things like managing people, managing relationships, uh, avoiding, pitfalls, turning around mistakes quickly. All of that you learn by experience. It's not something that, unfortunately, a university can teach you.
Yes.
But that being said, I never discount the value of formal education.
Okay. Yeah, so CredAble, I find it very interesting that you all thought of such a unique model. Could you give me a bit of background and what was the story behind it and how did you come up with it?
But I didn't come up with it actually. My co-founder Ram came up with it. You know Ram uncle, right?
Yes.
And he used to be the CEO of a very large, it's not really very large, but a mid-size logistics company out of Hyderabad. And then he built that company over several years. And that company used to do a lot of business with very large corporates, right? Like Amazon, like Flipkart, like Infosys and Microsoft and bunch of other guys. Now, when they wanted working capital, they went to banks with their invoices of these large corporates, but banks refused to fund them because despite the fact that they were working with very large companies, because they said, oh, you don't have vintage, you're a new company, your balance sheet is not very strong, etc., etc. So he realized that there is, this problem exists across India, across small businesses. And that's when he and I kind of got together and said we should solve this problem. And that's how CredAble was born.
Okay, so my next question is leading off from this one. You talked about why banks don't provide like smaller companies with capital. As of I know, in September 2021, you all provided loans worth 3,500 crores. How do you all get this capital? Do you all invest? Do you all give loans with CredAble's money, or do you all find other sources of financing?
No. We also give money from CredAble, but our out of the 3,500 crores, less than 3% came from our own balance sheet. Balance, all the money came from banks and very large banks, right? Multinational banks, large Indian private banks. And the reason we were able to do that is because we were able to transfer the risk from the vendor to the large corporate. So if you think about, let's say, Reliance, a bank is far more comfortable taking a Reliance payment risk than taking a credit call on a small vendor, right?
Yeah.
So if we were able to do that using technology, we were able to do that using financial acumen to structure products where the risk got transferred to large corporates. And hence hundreds of thousands of borrowers on the platform who were vendors or distributors or retailers to these large corporates were able to get access to capital.
Okay. So my next question is, your company is relatively new. It's only, I believe, 5 years old. Yet the amount of success you have gained is amazing. Like in the last year, and in total, you all have raised up to $40 million in funding, and have been on various different magazines, and have been you have been the finalist in the top 28 fintech startups in the world. How do you think you'll achieve so much success so quickly?
I think, Shllok, we built a great team. So all the success that you see is attributed to the kind of people that are a part of CredAble and the culture that we built in CredAble. So all the credit goes to them. I think besides that, I think two things happened, right? One, COVID provided a unique opportunity for us to be able to scale the business, because on one side, large corporates were very concerned about their suppliers and their customers, and hence wanted to provide capital to them. And on the other side, banks were very wary of supplying capital to these guys, so they were more comfortable with taking large corporate risk. So what that essentially did was created a perfect storm for a company like us to scale the business. That's one thing. The other thing that really happened is we had great partnerships with clients, with banks, with our investors, with employees of CredAble who supported the vision and really took the vision and ran with it, right? And I think that's really what caused all the success that you've seen so far. But the journey has just begun. I mean, we've barely scratched 2% of what's possible in this country.
Yes, and I believe you're going to make it a very, very long way. So you stated through many outlets that and your CredAble loans show that you all believe in many small businesses in India specifically. What makes these businesses so special? Would it so would you say that small businesses make up most of the money that you all give out?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 95% of the money we give out are to businesses whose revenues are less than 50 crores a year. So
why would that be?
Because they are companies who have least access to formal capital, right? So
Yes.
they are the most undercapitalized and underbanked companies in India. And they are the ones who are actually contributing to over 30% of the GDP of India. So if you think about it, there are 63 million businesses in India who are small businesses or micro businesses who contribute to over 30% of our GDP. And those are the businesses, unfortunately, who have least access to formal capital. So, that's a big opportunity for us or any company like us to address.
What happens when some of the small businesses default on the loans that you give them? Do your loans work in the same way that banks loans work, or do you have a different structure for that?
So we have two parts to the business. One is what we call the platform business, where the vendors, there is no question of defaulting, because what the bank does is essentially buys out the receivables of the vendor, and now the payment risk is transferred to the large corporate who's the customer of the vendor, right? So it is essentially the only way a default can happen is if a large customer like Reliance does not pay, because these are all post-invoice loans. So we've never seen a default ever in the last 5 years that been doing this business. Now, the other part of the business is where we lend out of our own balance sheet, right? Even there, we do what we call receivables financing, or post-invoice and pre-invoice financing, which is essentially giving capital for them for a very short period of time. So it could be 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. And typically this capital is used for them to continue growing their business and managing their cash flows. Secondly, we also have what we call their receivables. So if their customers are pay them, right, that money gets routed through us. So there is very little chance of that default happening. Again, in the last 5 years, we've never seen a default, even when we've lent from our own balance sheet.
Okay. So if you don't mind me asking, when you lend loans, you charge interest. How much interest you charge typically?
It varies it depends on the size of the customer, but it typically varies. We've charged as low as 6%, 6.5%, to as high as maybe 18.5%. So it varies.
So as I know, the industry standard is between 3 to 7%. What makes CredAble so special that that a company will take a loan for 18% interest of y'all instead of trying to find various different banks?
3 to 7% for small businesses in India. First of all,
businesses in total.
So even Shllok, for example, even Reliance can't borrow at 3%. Okay, but that being said, small businesses, especially given the size they are at, right? Nobody wants to take a risk on them at 7%. Correct. So
yes,
a company like Reliance or a company like Walmart or a Unilever can borrow at 6.5%, 7%, because they're very strong balance sheets. They have huge cash flows. They're very profitable. They've been in business for hundreds of years, and they have a AAA rating and things like that. But years, their revenues are low. The cash flows are unpredictable. So the risk is higher, right?
Yeah.
And because the risk is higher, to compensate for that risk, one needs to charge different rates to them.
Yeah. So do you all only give loans to Indian companies, or are you all also looking at multinational and non-Indian companies?
So we look at every company who operates out of India. Okay. So whether it's a multinational, it's a small business, it's a mid-market company, or a new venture-funded company, right? One of what we call emerging corporates in India.
Yes.
But we don't lend outside India.
Why don't you lend outside India?
Because India is such a large opportunity, Shllok. And like I said, we've touched barely 2% of the Indian market. So there is a huge gap that we still need to fill. So why focus outside when you have such a big opportunity in India?
So in the future, do you ever see yourself lending to outside India sources or outside India companies?
Well, the way we look at businesses, Shllok, these days is what's the next 6 months looking like? What's the next 1 year looking like? So at least for the next 1 year, we don't see ourselves doing anything outside of India. But you never know. So maybe you should ask me this question a year later.
Yes. So what are some skills that you feel as a CEO have helped you grow your business so much? And like, what are some skills that you've seen, or some attributes, I would say, that you've seen with others, or maybe with yourself also, that leads to either success or not success in business, or just attributes in general, you could say?
That's a great question, Shllok. So some of the CEOs that I have really looked up to, right? I've seen a lot of lot of great traits in them. One, of course, is empathy, and that's very important. The other is, very, very sharp focus on the vision they've set out to achieve, and relentless execution of that vision. The third thing I've seen is their ability to build and manage relationships. So whether it's with their employees or their customers or their partners or their bankers, whoever, right? They're excellent relationship managers, and they genuinely care about the people they work with, across the board. I think these are some of the skills which define a great CEO.
Okay, and then what are some skills you feel that like people have that a lot of people have which actually drag them down in your field or in business in particular?
Well, I've seen a lot of CEOs, focused on very, very what we call short-term goals. They have very, like for example, people running behind valuations rather than creating value, right? People not really focused on their vision to build and execute, um, what they originally believed was a strong idea. We see a lot of CEOs who get easily swayed by by others, by market perceptions, things like that. And finally, you see the worst thing a CEO can do is create a toxic culture within the organization. And I think that's the biggest killer for any organization.
Okay, yeah. So as of I know that CredAble is a private company. Have you all ever thought of going public with it?
Sure, I think we're a little early to go public, but probably in the next 3 to 5 years we will.
Okay. So what would be like one piece of key advice you would give to anyone who wants to either start a business or do entrepreneurship or study finance? Like, what would be one thing that you would tell someone that like you would have wanted to know when you're studying the fields of either business or finance?
Well, I would say the same thing I've said about great traits of CEOs, right? So it's very simple to get an idea. I get a new idea every hour, but I think what's really key is to how well you execute an idea. So execution is key. Build empathy, build great relationships, genuinely care for the people who work with you. And I think those things would take you a long way as an entrepreneur. Also, remember your investors' money is your primary responsibility to create shareholder value. So you have to believe, you have to look at it as a very, very precious commodity that you have, the trust that people have put in you. So you have to do justice to it, right? It's not money that you can afford to lose. So I think razor sharp focus on vision and execution, I think is very, very important for a great entrepreneur.
Mm. Yeah. So, but personally, do you invest in stocks or what type of assets do you like to invest into?
Oh, I personally invest in a wide range of investment products, Shlok. So I have a very high risk appetite. So I not only invest in equity and mutual funds, um, but a large part of my portfolio is also investing in early stage companies. So I invest in a lot of startups, or I have in the past. So that's one side, and then a certain percentage of my investments are in fixed income products, which give you a relatively which are relatively low risk and hence low return.
Yeah. So talking about high risk investments, have you ever thought of investing in cryptocurrency or digital assets in general?
No, I have thought about it. It's an asset class which is interesting, but I don't know enough about it, Shlok. So I generally don't invest in something that I don't know enough about. So far, I haven't invested in crypto assets. Um, but that is not to say that I may not in the future. It's just that I haven't done it so far.
Yeah. And how do you feel about do you personally think just eyeballing the way that the world is shifting digital? Do you think how a lot of people believe that in 20 to 30 years we'll be living in a VR world where our lives virtually will be worth to us will be worth to us in happiness as well as in finance more than our lives in real life. Like, do you agree with that sentiment, or do you disagree with that?
Well, I think the purpose of technology is to make life more comfortable, right? And to create more efficiency. But the purpose of life is not really to be absorbed in a digital world, right? The purpose of life is to create relationships around us, and nurture those relationships. So man as a fundamental human being is a social animal, right?
Yes.
So there's only so much you can do with digital avatars and VR and artificial intelligence. But at the end of the day, I want to meet Shlok, and I want to meet Shlok's father, and they're my friends, and I want to spend time with them on a one-on-one basis. So
Yeah.
I don't see I don't see that fundamental piece shifting for human beings. What I do see is a lot of efficiency and comfort being driven in the areas of health, in the areas of finance, in the areas of well-being generally for human beings, and hence you will see a lot of longevity of life going forward. So, Shlok, you will live a lot longer than I did.
Yeah, a lot of people are believing like now that we'll transfer all our conscience to digitalization, but like even I think it's a little bit too early to be jumping on that. But it's very interesting how a lot of people are so like are so invested into these NFTs and these projects that other people have come up with. So I would like to ask you, would you ever buy a digital piece of art for more than you would buy a real piece of art?
Look, I'm slightly old-fashioned. I would always want to buy a piece of art that I can see, touch, feel, enjoy, and is sitting on my wall, compared to buying a digital piece of art, which I can see on a computer screen. But look, the world is changing around us, right? So what we our generation looked at as pleasure is very different from what your generation looks at from an enjoyment and pleasure perspective. So I wouldn't be surprised if you guys are buying a lot more NFTs than we ever would. And that's really how the world is moving. And we'll embrace that change. But if you personally ask me, I would love a piece of art that hangs on my wall.
Yeah, and like the last point about this whole virtual topic, would you ever see CredAble having virtual offices where instead of going to like the real offices like you are today, you just get up and you put on your headset and then you have meetings virtually? Because like a lot of companies, I think even Facebook has started doing this. Would you ever see your company moving into a virtual space like that?
That is definitely a possibility, Shlok, in the future. In actually not so distant a future, to be honest with you. So today, I mean, we've got teams across multiple cities in India, right? We've got small teams in places like Chandigarh, in Jaipur, in Pune. Of course, we have very large teams in Noida and Mumbai, and other parts. But as we grow as an organization, there is going to be a shift to have people, want to work from their own environments,
Yeah.
and at the same time, you want them connected to a larger community. So what you said is a great vision. I think that might become reality much sooner than I would expect.
Yeah, I think it'll be very interesting to see like how a lot of companies move digital. Like I'm very excited to see how that works.
Yeah, but Shlok, at the end of the day, you really want to kind of have lunch with somebody sitting across the table from you
Yeah,
and have
you
a
you
conversation.
you would want to do that. Like I would personally like to meet you instead of meeting an avatar of you. That
Yeah.
is true.
So I think
Uh,
I think there will the key is going to be to find a balance, right?
yeah.
Such that you can why would you do things virtually? So that you have enough time to explore other interests. And work is not, and you can find what we call a work-life integration. Uh, and I think that's really important. And which is why all these tools and technologies will make it efficient for you to find that work-life integration. But that doesn't take away from the fact that you would also, being a social animal, you also want to spend time with other human beings.
Yes. So I was really I really like the point about you saying that you have to find a balance. So like I would like to ask you, since CredAble is a relatively new company, and since you'll probably have a lot of work to do, how do you balance how do you balance your personal life with your work in the company? Because a lot of people who are starting up who are starting up companies, or who are starting to work, believe that they should work a lot of time in the day, and they shouldn't really do anything except for work till they gain a vast amount of success. What do you feel? Do you feel that you should have a balance in the start of your business years
Yeah,
between social life and business?
no, absolutely. Who told you that startups have to work all the time until they become successful? I think we start at 10:30 in the morning and we end by 7:30 in the evening. Nobody's in office after 7:30. Uh, and then, we don't work Saturdays and we don't work Sundays. We take 30 days of vacation a year and we have 15 days of public holidays. And people don't come to work during those times. So it's a fallacy. It's a myth that startups need to work 24 hours to make it success, to make it big. In fact, people who work 24 hours or work 16 hours a day are inefficient people, in my view. They're because as you well know that after 6 or 7 hours of constantly working, you can't focus. You're not
Yeah,
productive anymore. So what's the point of burning electricity, burning money, sitting in office, doing stuff when you're not really productive or your mind is not there? So we don't encourage it at all, Shlo.
yeah. Then I really like that, because even I think there should be like a balance. But do
Of
you
course.
in your free time, do you read, or like
Oh
what do you
yeah.
do?
I'm a voracious reader. I read Shlo, during the day and in the evening. On an average, I must be reading between 150 to 200 pages a day.
What kind of books do you read? Do you read like business books, or do you like read just general books?
No, everything. I love reading autobiographies of successful people. I love reading fiction. I love reading business related industry data. Um, I love reading about history. I love reading about philosophy and mythology. So I have a bunch of diverse interests in what I read.
Yeah. So if you could point out what would be like your favorite book that you read or recently or in general.
Favorite book. Oh my God, there is a huge list. So I'm a big fan of Agatha Christie. I'm a big fan of Sherlock Holmes, and Jeffrey Archer, Frederick Forsyth. Those genre of books probably
So like the mystery
you
detective genre.
that's one genre. I'm very fond of reading books written by people generally written about successful CEOs. Uh, uh, I was recently reading an autobiography of the CEO and chairman of uh, Black, uh, um, a very successful fund. Um, and then I love reading about Jack Welch. He is one of my heroes. Warren Buffett is a big inspiration. So yeah, a bunch of things.
Yeah. So do you think reading is do you think reading would give you an edge in business or in your professional field?
Well, I think reading gives you an edge personally and professionally. Your horizons widen. You think a lot more. You understand the world a lot better. You speak better. You're able to articulate yourself well. So I think nothing can replace reading. Certainly nothing that you guys do with video games.
Yeah, even I started to try to get into reading more, because even I think that like if there's a lot of there's a I think there's like a form of beauty that like someone's whole life's work you can comprise in a 300 to 400 page book, and like you can take in a lot of knowledge. So I think my last question to you would be, in the future, do you see finance being integrated with technology as it is now? And do you feel like do you feel the future of these fields is very bright, or do you feel like or do you feel like it's comparatively boring compared to like bioengineering or something like that, which is becoming prevalent now?
No, I think, look, fintech is a great space. We're just at the beginning of what revolution fintech is going to create in this world. We have barely scratched the surface. I certainly, I mean, for one, I certainly don't think it's boring. I think it wakes me up and wants me to come to work every morning. It is super exciting as to what we are building and what can potentially be done in this space. And I don't think there will be finance in the future without technology at all. And that future is around the corner,
Yeah.
Shllok. So it's a great opportunity for people to explore. It's a great field for you young guys to look at as you graduate from colleges, and it's here to stay.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This podcast was amazing. I think I personally took back a lot of stuff, and I think I'm gonna go and research on a lot of stuff that you've talked about and try to integrate that